This conference will now be recorded.
Able to be ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the opportunity for public comment.
There's nobody in person. Is there anybody online that wishes to make public comment?
We have several members online. Would you like me to list out who it is?
No, but do any of them wish to make any comment for the public comment portion?
Nobody's indicated.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to item 3 for staff update, pages 8 and 9 in your packet.
All right, thank you. Welcome everybody to the first ever special meeting I've held for KTMPO in 6 years. Listed on the screen, you'll see the upcoming meetings with our TAC meeting actually being next Wednesday. Policy board being November 15th, and then December meetings are up there as well. Other updates are call for projects. Applications are due by Friday. You should have seen an email come out from James as a reminder. If you are going to submit projects, please get those in. If you have questions about the process, please reach out to staff. There are 2 TIP and MTP administrative amendments. These are project C45-02, the SH9 turnaround, and that administrative amendment was to decrease funding by $117,600 to match the amount that was approved in the UTP. And then project W35-07, which is Loop 363 in Lucius McKelvey Industrial. That was just a let date change from 2026 to 2024 due to TxDOT funding acceleration. And the last thing I have for staff update are the air quality readings, which were 80 and 79 parts per billion. With that, James, did you have any additional updates? No additional updates. Are there any questions on the staff update?
No questions. We'll move to item 4 regarding approval of the minutes from the September 20th meeting. Remind you that that's the last meeting we had because this is a repetitive meeting today. So any comments or remarks concerning the September 20th meeting? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes approved. We'll move on to item 5, pages 16 through 18 in your packet.
This is a discussion and action item regarding approval of an amendment to the congestion management process. James?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. We brought this before the board a few times. We've completed our public involvement. There was a 15-day public comment period from September 25 to October 9th. We had a public meeting in Parker Heights, due to one here and one in Parker Heights, both on the 5th. We did receive a few comments. Staff had a survey of the projects that we were analyzing and just wondering if the public had noticed any changes or improvements or negative. All comments were positive, or they hadn't traveled on those roads and so they didn't have any comment. There is a short summary in your packet of those comments and the survey responses we had. And with that, the TAC recommended approval on October 4th. I have heard from FHWA. We sent them a draft copy for review, and they said that it looked good to them. So once this amendment is approved, we'll send it back for final approval, official approval, and then it'll be part of our CMT, and that'll bring us into compliance with our SCR finding. That's all I have here, Ryan.
All right.
Okay, that's the information for us. Any discussion, comments? Nobody? Okay, this is a voting item, so I'll accept an offer to approve this. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nobody opposed. This all passes. We will move on to item 7, pages 32 through 33 in your packet.
Actually, item
6. So
Okay, this is a discussion and action item regarding the approval of the proposed revisions to the KTMPO bylaws. Everybody remembers earlier this year, a work group was stood up to review the bylaws and propose potential revisions to the bylaws. From the work of that work group, the proposed bylaws revisions are listed in the packet and on the screen. The proposals are Temple would receive an additional member on the policy board due to exceeding the 75,000 population requirement that was previously listed in the bylaws. Additional language noting that incarcerated persons will not be used to determine voting membership in the MPO boundary. That one was included because, as everybody's aware, we've had conversations of possibly expanding our boundary, and Coryell County has a high incarcerated population, so Judge Miller made a note that we should possibly include that in our bylaws in case we do expand our boundary. There was discussion and to create a small and rural representative for a position on the TAC. Typically, the smaller cities attend TAC meetings. So individuals for this position that are wishing to serve in this position, of course, would have to be nominated in writing by a local elected official for their jurisdiction, and any applications for that position would come to the policy board for determination on who would fill that role if we got more than one. That would be a 1-year term. At the TAC meeting, there was a request to add language to specify that the KTMPO director or designee will fill the role of chairperson at the TAC meetings because that portion, there was nothing indicating who the chair of the TAC was during those discussions. And then there was additional language added requiring a review of the bylaws at least once every 5 years within 6 months of the release of relevant census data and or the expansion of the MPO boundary to ensure that we are keeping our bylaws up to date. This item, like I said, did go before the TAC at their meeting, and TAC did recommend approval. But I'm open for any questions, comments, conversation.
So the first one, Temple receiving additional member due to exceeding the 75,000 population requirement. Isn't that population requirement already in the bylaw?
That was in the bylaws, and with the most recent census, yes, Temple exceeded that.
So is that truly a change to the bylaws? It's just putting another.
To add another spot, yes, would be a change because in,
how many?
correct.
There's a list at the bottom of the page with Article 1 that has, it's updated, but in the current version, it says 2 members for Temple.
Correct.
Also on the small and rural representative position, creating a 1-year term, that seems awful short. Somebody might get on there after a year. Is there a reason for just a 1-year term?
I think that was just, there are a couple members from that working group. I don't recall off the top of my head why we came up with a year.
I don't remember setting a year for that. I just remember setting a position.
We didn't set a year, we just set a position. The need for, we thought there was a need for one, but we just didn't set a.
Are there any term limits for that position?
No.
And they're not on the policy, so they're just.
Right, they're just on the tab. Right.
Yeah, but they would be a voting member.
Correct.
with no term limits.
Correct. And typically the TAC is a staff member anyway, that is just renewed annually.
So they're all in there anyway?
There's no terms.
No, there are no.
We're reappointed annually. We sign, our mayors sign it and submit it in to you all saying that we're on the TAC. So to me, it would be for them to follow the same procedure.
Looks like a one-year term.
So I guess we look at it that way. It's already,
Move to approve.
Second.
Before we do that, was there any other discussion from anyone? Okay, we do have a motion to approve this and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving to item 7, pages 32 through 33 in your packet. Ryan, James?
This is a discussion and action item regarding the adoption of the KTMPO 2020 Adjusted Urbanized Area recommendations that we received from TxDOT. James.
So after each census, the census looks at urban areas, and they have this whole process, and there's official designation of census urban areas. And once that process is complete, TxDOT looks at that data, and they make the boundaries make sense, so they expand to cover that urbanized area, and then make the boundaries so they're against natural physical roadways or rivers or stuff like that. And the importance of this is because MPOs are required to cover all the urbanized areas within their region. And so if those boundaries exceed the current MPO boundaries, then we have to make a change, which is what has happened to 2 small areas for ours. Tay, do you have the PDF that you could pull up for the map? Thank you. There's 2 small areas. One is located inside Fort Cavazos, and the other is a small undeveloped section of land in Copper's Cove, both in Coryell County. The TAC, when we were discussing this, there's some administrative changes that would have to happen as far as significant impacts. Staff doesn't really see any. Yeah. Thanks, Tay, that's good. So you can see here, there's this small area right here that's currently outside the boundary that would need to be included, and then there's this other small area north of Copper's Cove. TAC did recommend expanding the boundary to include both of these areas, even though we're in discussions to expand fully, possibly for all of Coryell and Lampasas. We are required to let TxDOT know if we are saying yes or wanting something different. So that's why this is an action, so staff can let TxDOT know, yes, we agree with the boundary changes and are expanding our boundary to include those areas. Miss anything, Ryan?
I don't believe so.
This is an action item, but before we go to voting on it, any discussion, comments?
I have some discussion. Do we have the authority to extend boundary onto federal installation without their approval? And the reason I ask is because I know that other contracts with Fort Hood have to be approved by DOD and others before they can be entered into. For example, with the Centex partnership, we had to do that.
It's already on the federal boundary.
But that's what I'm saying, that it's on the federal post, but to amend that, like when we went and we amended the contract, when y'all amended the, contract for recycling, everything had to get approved up the chain before it could be amended.
I know that, so I used to work this when I was still active duty. A lot of times, some things can't happen on Fort Cavazos unless the local agencies do certain things. So by us amending it could help. I don't know if that 100%. I guess nobody here from DPW. But
Here last week.
but it would still be needed for us, so it doesn't affect any. It will actually help more than hurt any future decisions that they make.
So we can always make the motion subject to approval.
I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary.
Well, we just do it, and then if they change their mind, then it doesn't, right? If they say it's good, then
Yes, Christina is online and she'd like to speak.
Okay.
Go ahead, Christina.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you if you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Are these two areas within the TxDOT right-of-way that they already have? And what would you need from us to proceed?
I don't know that these are in the TxDOT right away. These are something TxDOT came up with as natural boundary cutoffs for the urbanized areas. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we officially need anything from Fort Cavazos. We just need to let TxDOT know. But if there are coordinating efforts that need to happen after that, of course, we can have those conversations. I don't.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't foresee us actually planning within that boundary that's that shark fin on Fort Cavazos. But
The other one's State Highway 9, so I mean,
Yes.
that one's relevant.
And it is TxDOT.
I don't know if you could hear some of the discussion before you came online, but Mayor Lee made a suggestion that our motion might include language to the effect that this would be contingent upon Fort Cavazos or the federal government's approval.
Okay. Yes, I heard that. Thank you. And it looks like the one further to the right might even be around Main Gate, I suspect, which we coordinate and work with TxDOT because they maintain a lot of those roads and ramps, and so that could be why, because we do have traffic issues there as well. Thank you.
Christina, that seeing the screen that she's got shared? Are you sharing the screen?
No, I have it up in
Make
front
sure
of me. I'm
Christina's-
looking at the Adjusted Urbanized Areas.
So the screen is going in and out.
Okay. Christina, we had to figure this out at TAC. This is Jason Deckman.
Okay.
That shark fin area kind of in the middle, that's up there by Range Road, north of the motor pools, Old Ironsides. It's north of that. So it's just extending in the cantonment area. So I think it's
Oh,
made
okay,
a
I
point.
see.
We're not planning projects in the, it's TxDOT's recommendation. That's a recognizable on the ground boundary as opposed to just,
It's where 88.
yeah,
It's where the 88 brigade is.
right.
So it does not
Okay.
include the main gate.
The main gate's already included.
Yes.
It's
that's what I
already,
thought.
I see now, Jason. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, as long as it's just capturing cantonment areas, I don't think we would have any concern.
So I'd like to ask a question to Mayor Lee's comment about our approval is contingent. I mean, it's the federal installation. I think their approval is already contingent. We can do what we want. We don't have to tell them that they have our permission. Now, I'm not a lawyer.
We're not asking them
Yeah.
for our permission.
Well, all we're doing is we're just
Yeah.
leaving a loophole in the motion that if something changes, we don't have to come and react to it. If we made a motion
Yeah.
to do it and then they said we need to change it, then we're having to come back. But if we make it, subject to their approval,
Sure.
then it's just a loophole that doesn't
Yeah.
require.
No, that makes sense.
to Act again.
Christina, could you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
do you think that since this is just a planning area boundary, we need to make the motion contingent on Fort Cavazos' approval?
I don't believe so. I know we shared this with Mr. Dosen. I apologize, neither one of us was able to be there today after we had a member at the technical committee meeting where this was discussed, and there weren't any concerns raised. And since the rest of cantonment is already included in there, and it's just a kind of a planning area, I don't see any issues either way. I mean, if you all decide that you're more comfortable putting that contingency in there, that's fine.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Yes.
What is the relationship of the timing of the incorporation of Corio County and from Pasco County into the KTMPO service area. What's the timing of that relationship?
So this has to be done by the end of the month so we can notify TxDOT to update the boundaries.
Okay.
The other is taking a very, very long time because we're still waiting on some information from TxDOT that we can bring to the board where we can make an educated decision on what would be best.
I think we've been waiting on that 6 months,
At least.
somewhere in that range, at least, yeah.
And we asked kind of a similar question and tagged it, okay, if we approve this, what does staff have to do? Well, they have to go work with TxDOT, update the maps and all their plans, all their documents that says this is the boundary. James and his team are gonna have to sit there and do all that. If, so I said, well, if we think there's a possibility that we're gonna expand it across Pasco County, why don't we just wait and do it all at once? And, you know, that was, James and Ryan said, well, but that's double work for us, but that's what we get paid for. But we don't know when that may happen.
Yeah, so I was trying to ask a short question. So that we,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? If not, I'll accept a motion to,
I was
sorry.
gonna move that we accept the recommendation as
Okay,
stated.
so you're making the motion. Any second on the
Second.
motion? We have a second. What is the motion?
It's stated,
As
approve the
stated.
recommendation as
Okay.
stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item number 8. Also an action item, pages 36 through 38 in your packet.
This is also a discussion and action item regarding the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or the MTP, update and the creation of a steering committee. James.
As shared before, we're in the process of updating our MTP. Ryan and I were having a discussion a couple weeks ago about if there's anything in particular as we're looking at this, since it's due in May 2024, and it landed on staff's looking at the language and the data and making sure everything is going to be appropriate, but we would like some input from policy board and TAC and also the public on the front end of drafting this, specifically for the goals, objectives, and strategies that are in the MTP. I think that's one chapter. And the thought was maybe having a steering committee would be useful to meet a couple times in November and December, kind of look at what we have and then make some recommendations on what could be changed or improved. And then in January, February, March, possibly we'll go out for some public involvement, have some meetings and get some feedback on those proposed goals, objectives, strategies from the public, see what they are thinking. And then all of that can be incorporated into a draft plan, along with all the other regular edits that staff are making in the background. And I know some MPOs, they make this a big deal and there's a whole plan for an overhaul. I don't think with everything going on right now, staff hasn't had the time to do a full overhaul. We do want to tweak things as necessary, but felt like if we look at goals and objectives, that would be an important, one of the main pieces of the plan, and so want to focus on that. This is for discussion, up to the board whether to create such a group.
Right. So of course, you know, the MTP is our long-range plan. There really probably shouldn't be a reason to redevelop the entire plan every 5 years of a long-range plan. It should mostly be updates. But I don't believe we had a steering committee last time. I could be wrong, but what we're asking is that policy board to take action to create a committee and define what that membership looks like. We were thinking maybe 3 policy board, 3 TAC members, just to make scheduling easier, but those numbers are up in there, you know, anything's out there, but we are looking, you know, to see if there's interest from the policy board on creation of a steering committee and for input on what that looks like so that we can get, work with Judge Miller and Councilmember Long on getting appointments made to that steering committee for those who may be interested in serving.
been going through this process for years and years now. Is there, I guess, some aspect that's broke, do we fix it? Or how much input do you need to do what we've been doing for years? What are you looking for in this person?
Like James said, I think we're really looking for, some steering committee members to ensure that we've got, our goals and objectives aligned with what you all are seeing, or what your thoughts are. I came in toward the end of this process last time, and like I said, I don't recall there being a steering committee. So that was basically, a staff document that was drafted and submitted there was discussion at meetings, but we'd like some of that discussion to happen at the forefront before we actually start going through and making all these updates and revisions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't argue that anything's broken, but TxDOT's in the middle of updating their short-range transit plan as well as their 2050 plan. We have more infrastructure dollars. The timing of that is on the front end of this to make policy decisions about infrastructure that could impact this region for a very long time. We're seeing mega regions form. Dallas-Fort Worth's one, obviously, San Antonio, Austin is another. I would argue that we're becoming part of that mega region. We're already seeing Elon Musk with platoons of vehicles coming back and forth. We've had very short but important questions from Fort Hood is how do we connect down to Austin because they have interest in doing all of Fort Cavazos. My apologies. So I think there could be some benefit. I wouldn't say blowing it up, but I think some policy members to say how do we take advantage of informing the long-range transit plan, because typically when you go after federal dollars, if it's not in your short-range and long-range transit plans, it doesn't get considered at all. And so I think it's very important that we start talking about regional rail. There's a lot of discussion about obviously the high-speed rail from Houston to Dallas, but there's also a corridor that runs from Fort Worth all the way down to Mexico. And I think it's important for us to be on that map and in those discussions and how we connect all of that. This is a 2050 plan, it's a long-range plan, but I think if it's avoided those kinds of conversations, it would warrant some discussion. It's my input. Thank you.
I think it's it's not a throw it out. It's not even really a reset. It's just a realignment because different priorities. Some things hang on a little longer and it's like, we probably don't need that anymore because priorities have shifted or there's new incentives to do different things. So I think it's worth it. And I think having a policy board or a steering committee, subcommittee is worthwhile. I think one of the things that would be good though is to at least have, like, once you identify the committee, is kind of so everybody knows what the objective is. Like, here's the current plan. We're going to be looking at X, Y, and Z. We'll report back 3 times before May or something. Just at least so we know what's going on. It would probably be good. Have some transparency.
Well, it's not just knowing what's going on, but it's also being certain that we don't miss opportunities that we're kind of asleep at the wheel or missing. It's like crossing the T's and dotting the I's and putting in commas where they're needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will it make sense that, or does it make sense for me to think about, we're going through a call for projects right now. We've got a series of criteria that was developed for those projects. Now we set a committee to create or revise or to update goals and objectives. If they become somewhat different than what the call of projects is, how does that affect the call of projects? It seems like it's almost, am I thinking about this in the right way?
I can see that concern and where it would be almost counterintuitive to kind of do our call for projects and then do the plan afterwards, and the plan doesn't match the project call that we just had. I think we need to be aware of that as we go through this to ensure that priorities that we currently have, maybe they're just not as high ranking, or some other priorities are brought in at the bottom. I think we have to look at the possible implications of that.
What's the timing of the current call for projects and the start of this?
Yeah, projects are due Friday. We're hoping to start scoring next week and have final scores completed and sent out January, right after the new year.
If those directives from the steering committee are approved and our material is different, would you not open additional call for those types of projects?
I think we could possibly consider an additional call. Typically we do our call for projects every year. We could consider doing an off-year call for projects to update, but I know, the communities have done a lot of work for the current call for projects. So we need to be aware of that as well as we go through the process.
I guess what I'm suggesting or thinking about is maybe delaying this effort till after the call is complete, after May, and then initiating some update to the MTP for the next plan.
So the MTP is required to be updated every 5 years. So that's why we're going through this effort. And typically it's done in conjunction with the scoring call, because these are the projects that if we weren't updating, we'd just go into the 2045 MTP. But since we are, they'll go into the new MTP, and we're required to do the MTP update that we're doing right now, which is why they're.
In our mind, we have to call for projects coming in from one end, and then new goals and objectives coming in from the other. It's almost like building a highway that may not match together, it's either a little bit incongruous.
There is going to be they're not going to come in at the exact same time. And this may be a little bit of a fine point, but we're looking at funding scenarios getting adopted March and April. The MTP isn't going to be finalized until May. So any recommendation the steering committee makes, that MTP document, that's still in draft status.
So we just hold it in, we roll it into consideration, so we don't do it blind. We roll that draft so this steering committee can see what's going on and hopefully match what's requested with maybe new funding priorities or whatever we see.
And we'll have new call project next year.
Yeah, but possibly we could.
Or we've done a reprioritization in the past.
We could do that as well.
There are NPOs that do major and minors, so to speak. Majors once a year, minors about every six months or so, in case there's something that needs to be slipped in. I'm not arguing that we need to do that, but it's important that we update the 2050 plan to think about. So Hill Country Transit District was requested by TxDOT to serve on their short range transit program, and we're doing that with Cab Metro, Houston Metro, Dallas Air Rapid Transit. There's like 5 major metropolitan areas and roughly 5 smaller rural transit districts. We were nominated as one of those. We're also participating in their 2050 update, and that includes everything from transit to highways, all types of mobilities infrastructure. So I think it's really important that we do set a committee and we try to make sure that we're connected to these larger state plans.
Well, I'd make a motion that we create a steering committee of 3 members of TAC and 3 members of the policy board to do everything that was discussed.
Second.
Motion and second have been made. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item 9, discussion item regarding a presentation from Hill Country Transit District.
Okay, like the agenda said, this is just a discussion item regarding a presentation from Hill Country Transit District about new micro transit services and the partnership with Fort Cavazos. We have Daryl and Raymond from the HOP to provide the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry we didn't get to do this last week. The date, we did get the date released. Whoever did that, great. Good job. James, you did it. I just want to kick this thing off, tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. We've got about 17 slides. They're very broad in nature. I'm going to cover the first 7 or 8 of them, I think, dealing with just microtransit, but then turn it over to Raymond, and he will get into some details about some of these longer-term plans and just some really exciting things that are taking place with us. We're going through, as you know, some transformative changes, and we've needed some transformative changes for a long time. So we're excited about doing this. We've got some new contracts with Fort Cavazos, which Raymond will talk about. But for right now, I just want to do a quick reminder about microtransit service. What is it? How does it differ from what we're currently doing? So right now, you can't quite see it very well, but this is the Temple area with fixed route service. And you see this little line right here. It's very shaded, but it's pink on the paper. So the routes are in color there, green, blue, brown, and that pink surrounding area is the ADA service areas that are complementary to the fixed routes. We're required by law to have those. So this is the Temple service area right now. This is the Killeen service area, also with the ADA. By way of reminder for some of you, and maybe some for the first time hearing this, in May, this coming May of 24, we're actually going to initiate the microtransit system, and we're jumping into the deep end of the swimming pool by doing this. We're going to pull all of these fixed route systems, which are the larger buses that you see running around. We're going to pull those, we're going to park those buses in our yard. We're going to deploy a microtransit system, which is entirely different. As time goes on, maybe 6 months or so into it, as we're getting analytics back from some new software that we're procuring, we may and probably will reinstate a couple of the fixed routes, but they probably won't be in the same areas. We'll get heat maps from our software, which will tell us where the high concentrations really are. And so some of these fixed routes will come back and we'll shift them left, right, and maybe move them entirely. But that's part of the stepped, phased approach that we're taking to jump into this. The microtransit system, I'm sorry, this is just all of the 9 counties that we have as well. The microtransit will, and the software that we're employing will cover both urban and rural, so all 9 counties. The microtransit system looks more like this. So this is a conceptual, only conceptual. I want to emphasize the word conceptual because these are subject to change. But you can see we've got different zones set up. And notice this brown line where it's at. That's the east end of what will become a connector route. But the difference with this type of a system is it's totally on demand. So like the ADA system, well, let me back up to the fixed route. There's a fixed route stop right out in front of this building. So if you wanted to go somewhere on the current system, you'd have to go out to that stop. You'd have to wait for the bus to come around. We have a 1-hour frequency, so the bus only comes past there once every hour. So it's a long wait. It's not a very efficient system. With this system, rather than go out to a bus stop, you just simply pull out your phone, you open up an app, you order a vehicle to come pick you up. The wait time will probably be more in the range of 15 minutes, 10, 15, 20 at the most. But, and it really depends on how close the vehicles are. The software is actually handling the dispatching and the scheduling, so it's factoring in all of the data points from multiple people who are ordering vehicles, ordering rides at the same time. So it's the way the microtransit system works is like ADA, so it's an on-demand system. No more going to fixed route stops, etc. This is the Temple area, and this is the Killeen area. Again, this is the brown line is the connector route. Notice it goes all the way out south to Copper's Cove. So the concept of the connector route and the concept of the zones. pick a zone, let's just say Copper's Cove. Notice Copper's Cove's divided into two. We've got 3 vehicles assigned to Copper's Cove. The 3 vehicles can run all over into those 2 little section zones. We've got other numbers of vehicles that are assigned into each zone. Each zone, those are not hard lines, they're porous lines. So if the software picks up that there's a lot of demand happening in a certain zone, it will pull vehicles from other zones into where the high demand area is at that time, at that snapshot in time. So, but another overarching thing is that the on-demand vehicles, which by the way are much smaller, they're more along the lines of like a Ford Transit 350 kind of thing with a high ceiling, or a minivan even, or in some cases a sedan. So they will be running around inside the zones, picking people up, taking them from A to B within the zone, or maybe from A in one zone to B in another zone. Or if it's a long distance, let's just say somebody in Cove who needs to get to the VA hospital over in Temple, then it turns into a feeder system. Those same microtransit vehicles will pick the person up, take them, let's just say the terminus out there on the far west end of the brown line. That's where the connector starts. So they will transfer from a microtransit vehicle onto the connector route, and they will run them all the way into to the VA hospital. The connector route will stop in each of the cities and in each of the zones as it's moving along, but there's not going to be a lot of stops. So it's a feeder type system that's happening there.
Daryl, can I
Yes.
just interrupt you at that point? Does that mean, let's say somebody from Cove has a doctor's appointment at the VA in Temple.
Yes.
They're going to go to that first feeder stop.
Yeah.
And then they're going to stop each way. How do they back up from the appointment time to when they need to start out?
Good point. The frequency will increase even on the connector route. So right now, the frequency of the bus that runs, first of all, it's not a complete connector system. There's actually 2 legs. There's a section on the west and a section on the east, and there's no way they can do it without transferring several times. Currently.
Right.
That's right, currently. I mean several times.
Right.
So the way they have to do it now, there's a minimum 2-hour frequency there. So it would take them minimum 2 hours, and really counting the transfers, et cetera, it's really more like
And likewise for a return, I mean, we're talking the whole day.
It is. It's an all-day trip, and it's not effective. It's not efficient. It was restricted really because of funding for the most part. But we're past that, and Raymond will get into the finance side a little bit here. But so rather than having one bus go from far west to far east and back from far east to far west, one vehicle, we will have multi-vehicles going bi-directional. So at a minimum, we'll have 4 vehicles, 2 on the east, 2 on the west, and they will both be going bi-directional like this. So you'll see that wait time, the frequency will drop from once every 2 hours to about 30 minutes.
Well, it's going to be somewhere between 1 hour and 30, depending on how many vehicles we put in. It's all a function of how many vehicles we put into that area, which is another reason it makes good sense to pull those big buses off of the fixed route, because we're ultimately going to put most of those onto this connector. It's really important, very critical, that we have a lot of vehicles on that connector going back and forth. The more we can afford to put onto the connector, the more efficient the overall system will be. Does that make sense? But to answer the question specifically, it's how does the person know this software will provide travel time, and much like if you were to go to a new city and you're trying to get from point A to point B, it'll provide options: walk, taxi, transit. The intent is for the software to plan that trip for you so that you know you're going to use microtransit to go to the station. It's going to take you 45 to 50 minutes to traverse wherever your terminus is, if you're going to the VA or somewhere in Belton, it'll calculate that time based on travel time. And then it'll also calculate how long it's going to take for you to transfer to another microtransit system if you're not going to the courthouse or something close. And it'll basically give you an entire trip plan for your travel.
Question? Go ahead.
You mentioned that the zones of, the wild in the forest, but are they, will they expand? Because as I look at the map of what is clean, I know of people further south of that southern line
Good.
that
I'm
will
glad
want
you
to
brought that up.
use it as well.
When we went to Killeen actually threw us for a curve. Normally, we're asking for money and, they give us less money and all that. This past year, we went to Killeen, we asked for money, and they said, well, this is great, but we'd like some additional areas included in that, let's say the airport and some areas farther south that he's referring to. So we did come back and we did some calculations and figured out that through TNC's transportation network companies like Uber, Lyft, et cetera, who we will have subcontracts with, we can cover those areas. And we do have a pretty good amount of money in the Killeen budget to cover some of those areas. So we're going to attempt to cover those areas like the airport. We've tried the airport before and we haven't had very much ridership, but that was under a fixed route system, and this new microtransit system is entirely different. I suspect that we're going to see a lot of demand in those areas, in which case the analytics will tell us that. We will know, and we will be coming back to the council if we need more money. I did talk to Kent the other day. We've got another, you guys were currently budgeted at about $750,000. This year, because of the efficiencies of this system, it's $650,000. But Kent is going to keep that extra $100,000 squirreled away programmed for transit transportation. If we discover partway into the year that we need more coverage in that area, we need to put another bus in that area, et cetera, vehicle, we would approach him.
The council did ask for us to come back with a proposal to cover the entire city. It was more expensive than what council and the city manager had in the budget. And bear in mind that we're not covering any city in its totality. We have to start, this is the starter system that we're putting in. To cover the entire city is more expensive and it's less efficient to do that. And we have to start somewhere. So we're going to program this in, we're going to make it work. You're going to see ridership increase, and then we can come back after 6 months of the year and decide whether or not it makes sense.
Yeah, you answered my question. I just wanted to know if it was those boundaries expanded.
Yeah, we've kind of got a plan B and a plan C for those areas. But it will be spread out over the course of a year at least, so to really dial the system in.
Thanks. Daryl, when you guys came to us, one of the things you explained with these boundaries, which I think we had a similar question, is that, yeah, the Uber or the whatever TNC will provide, and expand outside the designated zones. But once you have the data for the TNC ridership versus the micro transit ridership, if you're seeing the heat map that there's a vast amount of ridership and that the microtransit can serve that more cost effectively than the TNC, then the zones adjust.
Yes.
And Uber's out of a job for that particular area.
Right.
Yeah, this thing, flexibility is key to the system. It's scalable. As time goes on, we will be getting daily reports back from the software. We'll see these heat maps growing, and we'll see where we need to make those shifts. And we can make those shifts on the fly. So I wanted to end on this. This is just, I'm not going to go through all these, but every one of these categories improves with this system. So it's more accessible to more people, there's more coverage, it's more equitable, equal to more people. The frequency, which is now a 1 hour thing, a 2 hour frequency on the connector route. You add 3 more buses on there, It's just simple math that will increase. Travel times will be shorter. Availability will be better than what hours and days, so those hours and days will expand. Information, the software is key to this. We couldn't do this 4 years ago or whatever, because the software really it existed, I think, around 2019 or so is when it really took off, and it's really taking off now. The cost will go down, ridership will go up, on-time performance, improve the reduced deadhead miles, et cetera, that we have. Cost of fuel and maintenance will decrease. And the last one there, scalable. It's a very scalable system. So we're excited about the microtransit system, and that's really just one of the areas of change that we're trying to implement. I'm going to turn it over to Raymond here.
I think we had a question online possibly.
Well, actually, it's the question for me personally, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Daryl, I'm just curious, are the ADA routes going to be merged with the microtransit routes? Are they separate?
Thank you. This is real important. We're not doing away with ADA service. When we pull those fixed routes off, yes, those pink clouded areas, in fact, we call it the cloud. That won't necessarily be, we will co-mingle all of our services. So our current services are fixed route riders, ADA riders, we have non-emergency medical transportation trips. All of those trips will be co-mingled into a single fleet of vehicles. And the software is able to distinguish the needs of the various riders. So as you put your information into the app, it will send you the appropriate vehicle. Go ahead.
One more question. So will all the vehicles be fitted for wheelchair and walker accessibility, or is that going to be just a portion of the fleet?
Right now, all of our vehicles are ADA compliant, but we're not required to have all of our vehicles set up that way. But because of the way a fixed route system operates, we pretty much need to do that. We will maintain at least about 20% of our vehicles with ADA capabilities. When you order a ride on the app, we maintain profiles on all of the ADA passengers, people who are certified ADA passengers. So when they log on and they order a ride, the system will know that person is, for example, in a wheelchair. So the system will send a ADA compliant vehicle to pick them up.
It absolutely will improve ADA accessibility, in my opinion, based on what I've seen in other parts of the country when this is deployed. Today, our dial ride, you have to call in, you have to schedule in advance. That's not, in my opinion, that's not equal service and accessibility. So having the ability, to me, this is a game changer for ADA. It makes everybody equal as to how the system works. Everybody will have similar wait times. Daryl said 20%. It's really going to be based on the demand. Bear in mind that not all ADA qualified folks require a wheelchair. There's other forms of ADA requirements that meet the requirement. They're known as ambulatory folks, so they have the ability to use the system if the system were more accessible and available. So we have very high hopes that this is actually going to improve everybody's quality of life. So I'll try to move us along. Thank you, Daryl. So obviously, we're very excited about microtransit and this connector service. We think it will be game-changing for all these reasons. Some of the additional innovation that we're looking at, which is quite vast examples, as we continue to get higher non-attainment congestion results. Examples are excellent at reducing vehicle miles traveled. They're one of the most efficient ways of addressing congestion mitigation, which again could be built into our plan. We've already had, as we've been talking to businesses as part of our presentations around microtransit, folks are coming out saying, hey, we'd love to be able to get our employees from point A to point Z, but that's difficult to do. Can microtransit expand? Microtransit is not designed for that. Examples are, and they're very successful around the country. So we have very high hopes for this solution. And it very much is a web-based app. Folks that are starting the code, if you will, that are going, let's say, to an HEB warehouse, just as an example, can sign up. We would, as a transit agency, help subsidize that. We partner with the actual business, so there would be a subsidy from the transit agency, a subsidy for the business, and then a third portion of that would be paid by the actual users of the van pool. So we have very, very high hopes that will be coming in the near future as we deploy things. We really want to stay focused on microtransit deployment of the connector service, and then very shortly thereafter, we'll have van pools that are available. Enterprise is one of the largest van pool providers in the country, so we have the ability not only to work on capital leasing vehicles, van pools, but maintenance, and they have all the bells and whistles already built into their system, so we can launch this very quickly and make it more efficient. We're also looking at a potential standing up what's called a Transit Management Association. We talked about that in the past. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. We wanted to make sure that the cities were going to invest long-term, and we could get this connector service in. Van pools are a great option when you set up a Transit Management Association. What that is a nonprofit organization that can have participation of businesses that can invest their dollars directly into transit solutions that may not already exist. So if they decide, or if we decide to create a Transit Management Association, this would be a great way for businesses to become a part of that, pay a certain amount of money, and then get to dictate how those funds are actually leveraged throughout the region. So we'll be very interested in doing that. Fort Cavazos, we finalized the agreement on October 11th. It's a one-year contract with 9 one-year options. It's going to increase our budget from about $12 million to 16, so it's really more like $4.2 million per year, and it has an escalator each year. It's around $49 million if Fort Cavazos decides to extend the contract for all 10 years. We will include a holiday shuttle that'll start up on Thanksgiving, or I think it's the day before Thanksgiving, and run through the holiday season, so right after.
It's actually the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after Thanksgiving Day. Yours and their Independence.
Yeah, and so we'll run a holiday shuttle, and then we'll kind of close that off, and then we'll start preparing for the actual launch of the service. It'll initially launch in February as a pilot program, with full launch in March, so we're really excited about that. This is really to try to improve basically the morale for soldiers as well as dependents on the base. And so there's a lot of not only qualitative or quantitative, but qualitative measures that will be looked at as to whether or not this is successful. You can imagine if a lot of these folks that are either deployed or working every day, they may have one car or no car at all. And so getting around the base, even to the commissary, to the exchange, to work out, to get to restaurants, it's not easy to do any of that today. So they're very excited. There's a lot of high visibility all the way up to the Pentagon. They're kind of using this as a national. This is the first pilot program. If it works well, they're thinking that they might want to deploy something like this to all the bases, not only in the nation, but potentially worldwide. So again, I think it's improving not only the innovation here, but the brand, which is important that we continue to improve the brand of our region and some of the things that we're doing. So we're all very excited about this program. As part of this program, the Fort Cavazos personnel recognize that they want to connect into our transit system. When you do that, it impacts availability of the infrastructure. And so we have programmed a $10 per hour fee, or impact fee, if you will. So for every hour of service that we provide, there's a $10 contribution, because they're their soldiers and family members that want to be able to use the system. That will also include, will allow us to have a local source of funds subject to them continuing this program to help offset some of the regional costs of standing up this regional connector service. So we're excited about that. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like, it's a bit of a tangled mess here, but the red is a circulator that will be running, connecting all of these main points of interest on base, and then these blue zones, if you will, are where we'll be running microtransit, and along that red route, there'll be multiple stops, so that anybody that is in one of the villages that needs to get onto the connector service, we won't necessarily take you from your residence everywhere you want to go. We'll probably take you, feed you into the connector, much like we're doing on the regional side. And so this, the red will run, what's the frequency on the connector?
About every 30 minutes.
About every 30 minutes. And so you'll be able to connect anywhere on base to the connector service. And then we've also been asked to provide some shuttle services to North Cavazos, which we'll do probably on a Saturday, so that folks that are up there can get down to the exchange and do what they need to get done and then back up. So again, by innovation, we're really excited about it. You don't typically think about procurement as an innovation, and the COG already has a relationship with a cooperative group called 791 Co-op. However, the innovation is that there's a lot of microtransit services, scooters, rideshare. There's even a very similar rideshare where you can literally with your phone register and unlock a car and use the car for a day or for an hour, and it takes care of everything just like a scooter would be. So we're currently working with 791 on a cooperative agreement to bring all of these microtransit providers, software companies, mobility provider companies. We've had 2 procurements. One is closed, and we're in the process of working through what it is we're going to purchase first. We're really focused on software, vehicles, and van pools. And we're also working to start hiring folks that are going to be operating services on base, and then a couple months later, we'll be doing the same thing for the region. So we're in the process of evaluating and selecting companies, and that should close on October 27th, and then we'll start looking at shortlisting companies. So in the very near future, we'll start pulling the trigger on some of these contracts. We also have to work with the Federal Transit Administration and TxDOT to make sure that they're comfortable with all the procurement processes that we're following, so stay tuned on that. Another area of innovation is really around the workforce. So we have a national, I will say, epidemic of driver shortages, and I think it's being felt not only in transit, but for businesses as well. And everybody sees what's happening with the UAW and how it's impacting the workforce. But I would say on average, turnover rates in transit with operators and mechanics range anywhere from 20% on the low side as much as 45% on the high side. I think we're right around 30, 35%. But when it comes to operators, we're probably closer to 60, 65% turnover. So you can imagine the inefficiency that causes. So one of the things we're trying to do is rethink workforce management. So there's many folks that are retired, VA, basically retired, and one of the other issues that we have with workforce, specifically in transit, is you're sedentary for a minimum of 8 hours. If you're working overtime, it can be 10 to 11 hours. I'm a big advocate for driver wages, but we can't be asking the board of directors to continue to pay 20, 30, 40% more for drivers. That's just an untenable situation. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is solving multiple problems at one time. Limiting the number of hours in the seat is important. We have folks that don't necessarily require health insurance because they're already on a health insurance plan. We tend, in transit across the nation, to skew to folks that are probably on their second or third, what would you call it, career? Third career, second or third career. And so we really want to increase the number of part-time drivers that we have, pay a higher wage so we can be competitive wage-wise. By making it part-time, we're reducing the amount of time that they have to sit in the seat, which will also help their health. And we may actually see some full-time drivers move from full-time drivers to part-time driver because it might balance out for their personal lives to actually be more beneficial. They have more free time, they make a higher wage, and they don't necessarily need the insurance. And we're also looking at insurance. We're in the process of changing our plans. We're actually going to improve the insurance coverage for the folks that have it today and in the future. And we're actually going to see a reduction in the cost of insurance. So we're trying to have innovation everywhere we look. And then finally, just to brief you, our bylaws require every member local government unit that is part of the transit district to sign an interlocal agreement. That interlocal agreement this year is going to be different because we're asking everyone to pay into the transit district. That's significantly different than what we've done in the past. We've been able to use local funds coming through non-emergency medical transport and other sources to fund the transit district. But for the last, I'd say 4 to 5 years, that funding has been drying up, especially on the non-emergency medical transport side. And most of our members, and not all of them, have known for multiple years that a local contribution was going to be required. So we have distributed an ILA to each member city and rural county, and we've asked them to provide that back to us signed by November 15th. So we're hopeful that everybody will participate to the level that they've communicated. We won't know until that date actually hits as to who's gonna be in and who's gonna be out. And that's it. So happy to answer any questions. Daryl and I are available to answer within my 20 minutes. Thank you.
Any questions for Daryl and Raymond? If not, we thank you both. We'll move on to item 9. I'm sorry, to item 10. Page 46 in your packet.
Thank you. This is a discussion item regarding updates on the KTMPO work groups, and I will let James brief the board on that.
We talked about bylaws already, so I don't think we need to talk about that. For safety, we had a meeting after the September policy board meeting. Staff are still gathering some information, so we'll meet after the November policy board meeting, provide some options, and then the plan is to have in December have a draft proposal for review, and then in January have the resolution for the targets for consideration. Those targets are due to be approved by the end of February, so there needs to be another discussion. We will have another meeting to talk about that if needed.
Any questions for James?
James, not so much a question, but a comment that maybe where we've got this discussion for the work groups, the steering committee for the MTP, if we're going to do that, this would be the perfect time for any updates or follow-ups.
Yeah, we can add that to this item.
Thank you, Jason. Any more questions? If not, that was a discussion item only. We'll move on to item 11, page 48 in your packet.
Okay. Item 11 is, of course, a discussion item regarding an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. Since the meeting was pushed, many of you, all of you actually, should have received an email from me just in case you had a council meeting and you wanted to provide a briefing to them prior to. Just to reiterate what was said in the email and sent out to everybody, We are still internally working with our consultant to finalize our high injury network. We've also sent out emails to coordinate meetings with county representatives and identified safety champions for this effort. If you have somebody you'd like to put forth as a safety champion, please feel free to send that information to us. And then staff and or the consultant will be reaching out probably in the coming weeks to gather input for inclusion of your jurisdiction specifically into the safety action plan. The last thing I have is November 6th, there will be a summit, a transportation safety summit that will be held here at the COG, James, in the morning. Staff will be sending information out about that, or Kimley Horn. And we also have a meeting today with the subcontractor that will be collecting and identifying all the in-kind dollars that we are going to be using for match. So there may be more on that at the next meeting. And then I'll turn it over to James in case I missed anything for this update.
I think that was everything. That everyone is welcome to the safety summit on the 6th. If you didn't get information, would like some, let me know. You're welcome to invite other people from your staff to be involved. So that's all I have to add.
Any questions for discussion? If not, we'll move on to item 11, again, a discussion item, or 12, sorry.
Okay, item 12, discussion item regarding an update of the possible boundary expansion. I briefly touched on this a little earlier. We have changed MPO coordinators at TxDOT TPMP down in Austin. I've kind of brought the new MPO coordinator up to date on requests that have been made for possible what a draft UTP would look like. Should we make a determination to expand our boundaries, because there could be potential funding impacts not only for the MPO but also for our districts. And we need to be aware of that before we make any move to expand our boundaries, because in being good partners with TxDOT, we don't want to just sweep in and have a negative impact on funding that they have already secured within the UTP. So we're still waiting on some of that information. When we get it back, we'll have additional follow-up conversations with the Waco district as well as the Brownwood district to see what information or concerns they may have before providing it to, so we can provide a comprehensive update to the board. But right now, like I've said many times, we're still waiting on information. That was my long way of saying we're waiting.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on to item 13, page 52 through 53 in your packet. James, or you Ryan?
Yes. This is, of course, a discussion item regarding public input received through September 2023.
We do have some new comments. I'd say the last one on there was about bikeability in our region. Some of the others were not very relevant or simple questions about safety. But the last one was about bikeability, advocating for walkability and bikeability, maybe something that the BPAC could work on. I think that's what it was.
Any questions? Move on to item 14, member comments. No member comments. We will be adjourned at 10:45. Thank you all for attending this makeup meeting, and very, very important to